sometimes, a large part of your crop might be overripe if you wait too long. So you have to work while the time is right. When the harvest is ready, you have to get the harvest to market or get it gathered in. So somebody who's going to be lazy and taking it easy when there's work that needs to be done is a fool. But he that he that sleepeth in the harvest, yes, when whoever's sleeping while it's harvest time is the fool, one who causes shame. A fool doesn't work while he can, and he has only himself to blame for his wants. It's shameful and disgraceful when your laziness and your poor judgment makes you rely on the labor of other people. And that's unfortunately what we're seeing more and more, is that that's really what communism does, is it discourages people from working hard because they see, well, these people over here aren't doing a thing, and yet the government's taking my hard-earned money and giving it to them, from each according to his ability, each according to his need, I think is one of their sayings. But what they're talking about is redistributing wealth. The equality that they talk about is, well, if you have some, then you better give some to this person, even though you're working for yours and he's not. So unfortunately, it's discouraging when you have and you pay and to sustain those who are often very capable of working, but they don't, prefer to live off the labor of others. In any case, there's a certain dignity in work too. That you still, even those who are having to work and sometimes pay to support others that are sometimes living lazy lives, there's still a certain amount of pride and dignity in your work, and God still expects us to be diligent. But basically the gist of these two verses is that if you're lazy, you're going to bring poverty upon yourself and really have only yourself to blame. Working hard and as God intends God will bless that labor with wealth and abundance. Verse 6 says, "Blessings are upon the head of the just, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked." This one's a little harder to unravel here, this proverb is, but the main idea is that God's blessings are showered upon those who are righteous. The word "just" here is another term throughout, particularly like throughout the Psalms. Words like, and the Proverbs, the just, the upright, the righteous, these are all words that are synonymous. And these are people that they're not righteous because of their own works. These are people who are righteous because they trust in Christ for their righteousness. They are just because they are justified. They're declared righteous through faith. But generally people who have the right view of what God expects of us and are more diligent in working, the upright and the just, they know that it's your job to work hard for a living, and God rewards the fruit of the labors of our hands. God's goodness and mercy are showered upon those who believe and trust in Him. But then it says, "But violence covereth the mouth of the wicked." There's a contrast here. The righteous are blessed. They receive receive God's blessings, whereas those who do violence, the wicked, wicked people are those who really kind of find enjoyment and delight in making trouble for others. They keep others from receiving God's blessing. They try to bring harm to other people. And their wickedness and violence, the wickedness and violence that these evildoers plan, it's not really something, there might be some who brag about that, but it really kind of causes them to keep silent. They aren't really necessarily proud of what they've done, although nowadays some of the wicked are very blatant and almost boastful in the way the things they accomplish through their wickedness. But in the sight of those who are righteous and honest, they really have nothing to brag about, but only shame. They really only bring shame upon themselves through their wicked devices, so that their mouths keep silent. There's another verse coming up. Verse 11 is a little bit similar. Proverbs 10 verse 11 says, "The mouth of a righteous man is a well of life, but violence covereth the mouth of the wicked." In verse 11, on both sides of the proverb, it talks about the mouth of a righteous man, and on the one side, and the mouth of the wicked. In this verse, it was talking about blessings are on the head of the just. And that's just a way of saying that God showers his blessings on the righteous. But in verse 11, it has more, the idea there is that the things that a righteous man speaks will be a well of life. What those who are upright and righteous say, the kind of things they say are beneficial and profitable to other people. And again, we see the way of righteousness associated with life. The mouth of a righteous man is a well of life, whereas the wicked and the foolish way is a way of death. But violence covereth the mouth of the wicked. It's kind of an unusual way of speaking. We don't talk about violence covering your mouth. I think and I think some of the newer translations I think have helped. It talks about what the wicked do with their mouths, the things they say. It exposes their violence, the bad deeds that they desire to do, and it really, again, it's nothing to brag about. It's nothing to it's nothing that they really show to the world and say, this is something I'm proud of, because because of the wickedness of their hearts, they might seem to be, blatant and confident in their life, but in reality, their way of life really only brings shame, and so it's not something that their mouths. They cover their mouths because they really don't want to. They really don't have anything to brag about, that'll go down in the history books that people will want to remember them for. And that kind of idea comes up, I think, in the next verse. We jumped ahead to 11 just because of the similarity with verse 6. But going back to verse 7 now, the memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. The just or righteous person is remembered and spoken of with praise and esteem long after his body is dead and decayed. Long after his body rots, his memory is still something that's there are good memories in the minds of those who knew him. But on the other hand, the name of the wicked shall rot. The reputation of the wicked will die and rot along with their body. People aren't going to be speaking about them in good ways long after they're dead. People are glad that they're gone. Their reputation. People don't like to have good memories about their reputations, the reputations of the wicked. Verse 8 says, the wise in heart will receive commandments, but a prating fool shall fall.
What's prating?
Yeah, I had to actually look that up because it's basically when your mouth is full of really idle, vain things. When you have nothing good to talk about, and there's a lot of foolish talk. I think if we would get rid of all the prating, half of the talk shows would probably get canceled. What do people really talk about in the world that's really worthwhile and edifying? A prating fool is somebody who might have a lot to say, but it's all worthless, gibberish stuff. It's not. Yeah, it might entertain, but it really doesn't edify and build up. The idea here, though, is that a wise person, somebody who's wise in heart, is willing to listen and receive commandments and instruction. A wise person does more listening than talking. They realize that in order to learn wisdom, you have to be quiet. Like James, the book of James reminds us that every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Your mouth can't be talking if you expect to be learning. So a wise person realizes that he has a lot that he still can learn, and the way he's going to learn is through listening. But a prating fool is kind of a know-it-all. Is kind of somebody who supposes that everybody wants to listen to me. I know so much. Everybody will want to listen to me. So he's always spouting his clever opinions, which really don't offer any true wisdom. And he's so busy talking that he doesn't ever listen and learn. And I'm sure we've all know people sometimes, and maybe we've even been guilty of it ourselves, where we're so busy thinking of the next thing that we want to say, or the people we talk to are so busy thinking of the next thing they want to say that they don't be quiet and listen to what they might have to learn from others. So it says here that a prating fool shall fall. A fool who's always too busy with his idle, useless talk, too busy to listen and learn, will bring about his own ruin, because he already thinks he's so wise he doesn't need to listen to anybody, but his foolish talking keeps him from growing wiser and learning. So as young people and as older people, we should always, this proverb should remind us to guard our lips so that we don't merely spend our time in idle, foolish talk, but in meaningful and edifying conversations. Think of how much idle time, sometimes even we're guilty of spending, looking at stuff that's, it's fun to research, surf the internet, you find funny things to share, but is that stuff really edifying one another and ourselves? Verse 9 says, he that walketh uprightly walketh surely, but he that perverteth his ways shall be known. Again, the person who walks uprightly is like the just, people who are described as being the just in the previous verses, verse 7. Someone who walks uprightly walks according to what he knows is right, according to God's commandment and will. And a person who is walking righteously can walk with confidence. He can know that he's doing the right thing. I think I remember reading, I think Davy Crockett had a motto that was, be sure you're right and then go ahead. So if you know that you're doing the right thing, you can then do it with confidence. But if you're unsure, you're going to be timid. That's kind of a good thing to do. Be sure you're right and then proceed. And that's how a righteous person, a person who's following walking in the ways of righteousness, can walk who's walking in purity and godliness, can live with confidence. It's not self-confidence, it's not confidence in yourself, but confidence that what you're doing is right with God. And on the other hand, it says he that perverteth his ways shall be known. Another way of saying this, somebody who walks in a perverse and crooked manner shall be known. His perversity, his crookedness will get exposed. His real nature will sooner or later become evident. So somebody, we could phrase this: he that walketh uprightly walketh confidently, but he that walketh perversely, somebody who's finding all kinds of crooked and dishonest ways to get ahead, eventually that'll catch up with him. And it does. All you have to do is look at the dirty politics. People think that they're gonna win the campaign if I just smear this other person, and they engage in all kinds of dirty dealing, perverse and dishonest talk, and eventually it might take a while, but a lot of times it comes back to hurt them, not the other person.
Sometimes it seems like it doesn't come back in this life, though.
It doesn't always. Yeah, I think one of the hardest lessons too. I think one of the devotions in One Accord this week, I think they're by Pastor Bowers. I think it was on Psalm 10 that talks about vengeance. I think one of the hardest things for us to do is realize that in certain situations, it's not our place to take vengeance. Let's see if that's the right one. Might have been a different, or maybe it was just what was in the devotion was quoting it, is tying it in with vengeance. So I think sometimes, it is true. It seems like there are times when wicked people seem to get away with their wickedness all their life, but they will eventually have to give account, even if it's when they stand before God on Judgment Day. It will catch up with them, even if they manage to, get away with it all of their earthly life, they will have to answer to God for their perverse ways. And there are times, on the subject of vengeance, there are times when we want, we would so much like to give them a taste of their own medicine or get vengeance, but we sometimes just have to leave that. We generally have to leave that to God to avenge our cause. That doesn't mean that we just have to, in every case we have to just lay down and take it. If we can use our voice and speak up on behalf of ourselves or on behalf of those who are getting oppressed, we certainly should. But sometimes the people will have to deal with God's vengeance, not ours. We'll do one more here. Verse 10, Proverbs 10, verse 10. He that winketh with the eye causeth sorrow, but a prating fool shall fall. The theme of this prating fool comes up again. That was in verse 8. Talked about, but a prating fool shall fall. The eye that winketh, or he that winketh with the eye, that might be somebody who's prone towards mischief. How they use a wink because they're up to no good, and it might end up being something that's kind of hard. They're always doing harmless pranks or things that are maybe they're more harmful than they realize, but they're not really using their life for something useful. They maybe are busy pulling pranks and doing mischievous stuff.
I figured that meant like a liar or someone who's deceiving.
Oh, somebody that winketh with the eye. That's,
yeah, like.
That may be part of the meaning there too. I didn't come across that in my commentary, but that's probably it would definitely be linked with somebody who's not really being totally truthful and honest.
It's like crossing your fingers behind your back
Right.
when you're talking.
Yeah, you're being
But you're giving a signal. You're giving a signal to somebody that you know that you're lying, but nobody else does.
Yeah. So we're kind of doing sly moves, but and such a person, according to this proverb, is going to cause sorrow. It's not, if he's again, if he's not using his life to walk uprightly and to follow the ways of the Lord. He's going to bring sorrow on his parents. He'll end up reaping consequences in his own life. But a prating fool shall fall. And we talked about it. A prating fool is prating. One who prates is somebody who's engaged in idle and foolish talk. Idle, vain talk. So those who are always up to mischief will bring sorrow because their lives really don't have much value to themselves or to others. But even worse is a fool who constantly engages in idle, useless talk and never keeps quiet long enough to learn something that would make him wise. I think we'll stop there today. Pick up at verse 11 next time. There is, even though these are kind of loosely just, they seem to be rather random proverbs, there is kind of there are sort of unifying threads. They talk, how you speak and how you live. It's dealing with, so they're dealing with practical matters. This is the realm of sanctification, the type of life you live as a believer. You will be living a or seeking to live a life that's that shows that you are redeemed by the blood of Christ, whereas the fool, the one who lives according to the world's wisdom and follows the ways of folly, brings death and destruction and sorrow and misery on himself. Again, maybe not in this life, but it might not catch up with him until he stands before God, a lot of that. But usually there are...
Most of the time it happens here, though.
Yeah.
Don't count on it not happening.
Right. Be sure your sin will find you out. It is. And some people are really good at masking, too. You don't really see the evidence of how their life, the consequences, but it's there. You can see some evidence of the consequence.
The word known, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to know.
Right.
It just means that someone will. And
yeah.
Consequences are different depending on that. So you may not ever know that if something was known, brought to light, and spend your life frustrated about that, when in fact it did become known and you just didn't have that knowledge of it.
Yeah, shall become manifest. We use that word like a manifest sinner, somebody whose sin becomes known. And yeah, it may not be known to everybody, but some people see it. So as in general, all of these proverbs are teaching us lessons to encourage us to walk wisely according to God's wisdom, and that there are earthly consequences of not that we do this because we want God's blessing, but we do it because it's the right thing to do, and the blessings come upon those who live righteously. God promises those. But even if it does seem unfair, even though like the Psalms often complain, even though it might seem like the wicked, I think that was another one of the Psalms. Just read through in the devotions. Psalm 8. Oh, so that's where Psalm 10 probably came. Why standest thou far off, O Lord? Why hidest thou thyself in times of trouble? The wicked in his pride doth persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices they have imagined. To us as believers, there are times when it seems like, why are the wicked the ones that seem to be prospering, and the Lord seems to be hiding himself from us? But then he prays, let them be taken in the devices they have imagined. And that often does happen, that sometimes the schemes that men lay for others end up coming back around. And I think you see some of that. Just take for example the absurdity, all the whole gender identity thing, and how I think Europe is ahead of us as far as what they tolerate, like as far as homosexuality, but as soon as they've allowed, as soon as you allow one perversion in the door, the next perversion is going to ask for toleration too. So now they have these people that are into I don't know, things we don't even have to mention, but there are worse perversions that they want to legalize, sexual sins and things like that. Well, you've legalized homosexuality. Why can't, if I want to love a child and marry a child, why can't I do that? So there's once that they let the foot in the door, they try to stop it somewhere, but that wickedness is going to keep trying to make advances, and so eventually some of the things, and look at what's happening with so for years people were all about women's rights, equal rights for women, and now they're undermining all that because now you get a biological male who wants to compete in a women's sports, and now the women are like, well, now I can't even compete fairly, so now I can't even compete, you know, in a women's sport. I have to compete against this one who says he's a woman, but he's, you know, so it's like, so they've undermined.
First you demasculinize men, and then you've already ruined the man, and then you ruin the woman.
Yeah,
And
you're ruining everybody.
so you've destroyed this part of the family, and then you destroy the woman, who is where everyone comes from, woman. Like without woman, there's no, you don't have new life.
Yeah.
So they've already destroyed the man, so the society's broken down, and now they want to destroy the woman.
Right.
So they want to vilify her for creation itself in a new life.
Yeah.
It can, and so they don't have to do anything more to the man. They've
Yeah.
already done that damage, and they have to shift. It's just part of the Luciferian agenda to make it
that's one of the goals of the wicked is to completely destroy the family, because that's the strength of society is in the families. But my point was just that, you know, here they supposedly were all out for equal rights for women, and now they've just knocked, you know, now they seem to be fighting against what they were fighting for. Their message is always changing. What they were fighting for
But the purpose is
80 years
always the
ago is
same.
now like the very opposite of what they seem to be fighting for now. So it's like
The
they
end
can't have
goal
it
is
both
the same,
ways.
it doesn't change. It's just a different
Yeah.
tactic to get to there.
Right. Yeah, it's all serving the cause of evil, but they don't realize that they're talking out of both sides of their mouth. All right. Well, let's close with the benediction. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the communion of the Holy Ghost be with us all. Amen.